Welcome to the Unity Guides Expert Interview Series. My name's Clayton Stenson. I'll be your host today. This series is brought to you by Unity Guides Incorporated, where we help develop Unity within companies running on the entrepreneurial operating system. We do this through fractional integrator services and relationship coaching for the visionary and integrator. And the reason I started this interview series is that I've met some pretty amazing people in recent years, and the conversations we've had have been valuable to me. And I thought I should share these with other people to add value to them as well. So today's guest is Danielle Fauteaux. Danielle is the founder of Momentum Marketing, and she helps creative agencies get more clients and escape feast or famine mode, which I've experienced, by building repeatable lead generation. So welcome to the show, Danielle.
Thanks for having me, Clayton. Really looking forward to talking today.
Yeah, me too. Awesome. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. I don't think I've talked about this with anybody yet, so I'm excited for that. Today we're going to talk about how lead generation is a team sport. So why don't you tell us a little bit about why you wanted to talk about that today?
Sure. Yeah. Lead generation as a team sport. This is not a soapbox that I have always stood on, but it is one that I have come to build and stand on loud and proud because of many reasons, but namely because especially in the context of creative agencies, marketing agencies, but broadly speaking among professional services firms, any business where the people define the success of the product and the customer experience to like a 95% degree.
Yeah.
In those situations, I have found in working with businesses that despite efforts to have maybe like one person leading the initiative and driving things forward, it cannot happen. Lead generation, revenue generation, demand generation, it cannot all happen by one person, even if that one person is the founder. And that is a trap that a lot of founders wind up getting themselves in, and they can't escape the trap. They can't get buy-in from their team. They try to hire outside people to help with their sales funnel problems, and that massively fails, and their life is worse for it usually. And so, as I experienced these kinds of situations and have guided agencies through growth, um, the agencies that succeed are the ones that have this mindset that lead generation is a team sport. And that's why I've become so passionate about integrating that into the Momentum framework and how professional services firms go to market, position themselves, and service their clients, and then building that repeatable rev gen system off of that. So that's why I was really excited to talk about this today, because there's a lot of uh, side issues that correlate to this topic as well in how an agency and professional service firm functions that creates this need to have a mindset shift oftentimes within the organization. And that's a lot of the work that you do, Clayton, is helping teams overcome some of these shifts, making sure that leadership is in unity on the direction and how to bring the strengths together of core people in core roles. And so it really goes hand in hand to a lot of what
Yeah.
the work
Yeah.
that you're doing, Clayton.
Yeah. One of my favorite analogies that I use to coach teams that I work with is be a thermostat and not a thermometer. I don't know if you've heard that before,
I
but
have heard it before. I'm pretty sure I heard it from you though, so I don't know if that
you,
counts.
oh, okay. So, a thermometer just accepts, it can't change anything, right? It just
Tells you what's there.
tells you what's there.
Yeah.
And a thermometer can do something about it and change it, increase it or cool the temperature depending on what's needed. Right. And that kind of came to mind because, if it's a team sport, we're all we're all thermometers, right? Like a thermos, sorry, other way around, thermostat. And whereas I think sometimes people can be like, why, we need more revenue. Like, it sucks we don't have revenue. Why isn't that person doing more?
Right.
Right. And then it's just, pointing the finger and imagine the weight of that for
Mm-hmm.
that person when no one's pulling the weight. Right. And so uh I try to use that analogy quite a bit. So does that resonate? Like I haven't,
Absolutely.
I guess I was going to say I haven't been a owner of a business where the weight falls on me, but it does. I'm a solopreneur, so it's a little different. But yeah, how does that resonate and affect what you're talking about? That
Mm-hmm.
might you.
It does resonate because it's easy to um, especially in service firms, professional service firms, where you have basically a team of implementers and like an operations team. And
Yeah.
then you have a business development team. It might just be one person, but that's the function.
Mhm.
It's really easy for there to be this very big rift and separation between the two. And I actually do advocate for there being a separation because otherwise you can't align incentives properly and you get some
Right.
dysfunction in the P&L statement, basically. But with that separation, you still have to build bridges. And it's that building of the bridges that I think gets lost in a lot of businesses that
Mhm.
you can work to resolve. And there's a lot of things that you can do to build those bridges and get your team involved in lead generation.
Mhm.
Um, there's this idea that marketing and sales, it's all of these tactics and things that you have to be doing that are super like outward facing and all of that. And to some degree, yes, that's true, but that's not the
Part of
full
it.
picture,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And so looking at the full picture, the other aspects of marketing and sales is the customer experience. It's every single touch point that they have with your organization. It's getting them connected to multiple people. You know, if they can be connected and have relationships with 3 to 5 people on your team instead of one person on your team, you're a lot stickier to them in their
Mhm.
organization.
Mhm.
And if you and your team members can build relationships with more of their team members as well, you're just increasing that stickiness factor even more. And that is why you have to make it a team sport because one person cannot be 5 people in this equation. And so you have to build those leaders and build that mindset within your team. And as an owner, one of the hardest parts is actually like stepping back and letting people take some agency to your brand. And that can be really, really challenging for some owners. And so there's that component to think through as well. Have you seen anything similar, Clayton?
I've seen it in my own business. So, I said I'm solopreneur, but up until January or October, I didn't have any team members. And so in January, I hired a couple of people to help me with different parts of my business, because I'm getting busier and I'm seeing the feast and famine that you're talking about, right? When I get really busy, I stop doing business development and lead generation stuff. And then the pipeline dries up. And then when that client, because generally I'm working with clients for 6 to 12 months, then when that ends, and now I have to refill the pipeline and then go through a famine, stretch usually, where there's less revenue coming in. So, but hiring those people and giving them stuff to do and trusting them, to run with my brand in a different way. And this is like I'm talking about an assistant and actually somebody who does lead generation type stuff for me. That's been tricky. It's been hard to let go. Um, but I'm kind of have to, right? Like
Yeah.
I have to, and I've hired people that I trust that, I've one that I've known for a long time. And I know she's a honest person and she knows me really well. So I trust her to respond on my behalf because
Mm-hmm.
she knows me that well. Right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's about finding those people, and oftentimes they're already on your team.
Mhm.
Finding the people that understand and know and can fill certain gaps. And so looking at like what is that business development, marketing strategy, revenue generation strategy, what are the gaps that need to be filled? And what are the strengths of the people we already have on the team where they could spend maybe 4 hours a week doing particular activities that drive towards this initiative? Doesn't have
Yeah.
to be their whole job. It's basically a role extension. And
Yeah.
each person might be doing something slightly different, or you might have a couple people collaborating on something, but it's all driving towards that same end goal,
Yeah.
right? And then where you still have gaps, it's a matter of looking outside and finding external solutions to fill those gaps. You might have to go through a couple rounds of trial and error and maybe failure and rehiring. And that does
Mhm.
happen, but it's part of the process, right? But
Mhm.
once you've filled those gaps and you have that delegated and you have that system rolling, you've then created a new picture for your business. And instead of having a sales cycle that looks very up and down, you've created something that still has some waves to it, but the waves are a lot smaller. You've got less variation between the highs and the lows, and you're able to much better forecast your cash flows, your
Yeah.
operational planning, and all of your project management and capacity planning. You're able to hire at the right time. You're able to figure out where to invest more in business development. If you can go to that event that's 9 months from now and know that you'll have the cash to be able to take more than
Yeah.
one person to it, there's a lot of benefits to making that happen. And so, yes, that all sounds great in theory, but what's the practicality of it
Yeah.
and how do you get people on board? That's always the biggest challenge, right? Is helping people come to terms with this mindset that lead generation is truly a team sport.
Yeah.
And so there's several ways that you can go about doing that. We can get into that too if you want, Clayton, but I'll pause for a second and let you add anything else that's come into mind.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, what comes to mind for me, like the practical side, when I hired my assistant, who is 4 hours a week, actually, it's funny
Oh,
that you
that's funny.
and she's a stay-at-home mom that
Yeah.
I worked with before at my church. She's got 4 kids, 2 at home, and you know, so what I did, and this you might say something similar or different, it'd be interesting to hear, is that I'm like, okay, I'm going to hire her. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do her job. Like I'm going to segregate it as a separate thing, but I'm going to do what I'm going to ask her to do. I did it for 2 weeks. I had a scorecard. I measured it. I created, shared documents and everything. And then when she came on board, I said, okay, I've already been doing this. So here's the template. Like, here's what I did.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what I asked her to do. It's like, what happens for me is I meet somebody that I really like, that I think could be a great referral partner. And we have a great meeting. And then I forget to follow up, right? And continue to build the relationship. So I just asked her, kid, this is what I want you to do. I want you to book meetings for every 90 days with people for me, right? And just keep track of who I'm meeting with, and make sure that you're doing that, and that will keep consistency, because majority of my business comes from referrals,
Mm-hmm.
right? And for with key people, so that's been great, because now I
Mm-hmm.
have meetings in my calendar all the time with people that I really like,
Yep.
and I don't have to do anything except show up to the meeting. So
Right. And
is that
you
a
get
good
to show up
example?
as your authentic self to those meetings and not worry about the ball falling through the cracks
Yeah.
afterwards because she's taking care of it. But you did something very important, Clayton, that especially for more creative minded people can get missed sometimes, is you did it, you documented it, and then you delegated it. You didn't just hire someone and say, fix this problem for me, figure it out. You worked a process, you defined a process, you documented it, you trained them on it, and then you laid
Mhm.
out the expectations of how that is to be carried out with them being the person doing it and responsible for it. And that's a really key step for anything that you're going to be doing when you implement lead generation as a team sport.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And it worked.
Mm-hmm.
It works really well, and it's been a blessing to me and a blessing to her.
Absolutely. And
It-
that's the thing. You even though you're not always going to be hiring external people, so it might not be that same kind of blessing like it is in this situation that Clayton is talking about. You might be giving someone a role extension that gives them a new creative outlet that helps them
Mhm.
enjoy their job more. Or
Mhm.
you might give someone the chance to try something new and they find out that they really like it and it allows them to pivot into a role that's better suited for them entirely down the line.
Mhm.
And you come to develop new ways of valuing people in your organization, and that's always a good thing.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true. And with her name's Sonia, and she's awesome. I coached her husband here recently too, and we did premarital with her, and I told her, like, uh, this could be more, right? Like, as your kids get into school and time frees up for you, let's keep the conversation going, and what else
Hmm.
could you do? And yeah, she has started to do other things as well, and it's been really great. But
Hmm.
that's a little off topic. Uh,
Yeah.
so what other tips do you have for this, making it?
Yeah. Well, another barrier to professional services firms and especially marketing agencies doing marketing and business development, because it's definitely a cobbler whose kids have no shoes problem, um, is they feel like they have to spend all this money on tactics and tools and ads and like all of these things. And it's just not true. A marketing agency that is an ad agency and sells ads and delivers ads for their clients is probably not going to be getting most of their clients by running the same kind of ads that they deliver. And so shifting that mindset as well and making sure that you're implementing the right playbook, designing the right playbook for your go-to-market strategy is really, really, really important. And then also stepping back and looking at alternatives to just spending a bunch of money, right? So in a scenario where you're doing basically role extensions for people, um, you definitely should give people raises if you are significantly expanding their role. But if they're already not at the utilization goal that your firm has for people, that's actually a better way to make sure that they keep their job instead of you having to let them go. So you can be honest with them about that too. If they're like, oh, well, you're making me do more. Well, if you don't do more, you might not have a job. So, but in that way, you're already spending to make it happen. You're not having to have more cash outflow, but you're building up your marketing engine that will deliver down the line. And so having that started now is better than starting it 2 years from now, right? Like that old saying goes, it's better to plant a tree yesterday, but the second best time to plant it is today. So you can definitely get started there. But think through those alternative options as well. Especially if you're struggling with cash flows right now and you're trying to get out of feast or famine mode, you might be like, well, yeah, like, of course I need to spend on marketing, but I literally can't. Find those alternative options and figure out those ways to integrate it into what you're already paying for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of people are scared to invest in marketing because they don't know how to measure ROI, right? To
Mm-hmm.
know that it's worth it. Um, what's your response to that?
In terms of measuring ROI,
Yeah, yeah,
um, measuring ROI, you're going to have different things to measure for different strategies and tactics, right? So there's not a one size fits all approach. You
yeah,
should be very keenly aware of, though, where your revenue is actually coming from.
yeah,
And yes, it might be a little bit more ethereal, especially if most of your revenue is coming through referrals, like a lot
yeah,
of professional services firms that have that scenario, and that's just the
yeah.
reality. But you should be tracking that. You should have an understanding of how they're coming to be referred to you. I'm also a huge fan of sending people thank you cards, even if you don't have
Mhm.
a formal referral agreement, maybe even like a $25 gift card, just a
Yeah,
token of appreciation, even if like you can send that kind of token even if you don't land the business, right? But you're building up rapport and that literally costs you $1 between postage and the card itself, and then a couple minutes to write a thoughtful message. That's $1. That's a marketing activity, right?
yeah,
And so it's those little things, planting the seeds that grow over time, and
yeah,
then you will get the fruit from that.
yeah. Those little things make a big difference. Just tell you a
Mm-hmm.
quick example. I was on a podcast a while back. He invited me to be on the podcast. And once I filled out the paperwork or the forms or whatever, I got a box in the mail. And I was like, what is this? And I see who it's from and I open it up and there's a microphone in there. And it says, hey, thanks for being on my show. Here's a microphone to help you, make sure your audio is great for the podcast. And I was like, wow,
Wow.
handwritten note. I'm like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then after it was published, I got another box in the mail. And I was like, what? For same guy, I open it up and it had a coffee cup that, I won't go into the details of it, but and it on the bottom of the coffee cup, it had a web URL and, went to it and there was a note said, go to this URL for a message that explains why I sent you this cup. And it was like, wow, like this is really cool. Right.
Mm-hmm.
They went
And
there.
how did that make you feel? Both of those interactions, how did it make you feel?
It made me feel special. It's like, wow, it made me feel like I already loved the guy, just to be honest. I already loved him, but this was like just really, really drove home the point. And and I had him on my podcast and and yeah, we've built a great relationship over the it's been about a year and a half that we've known each other. But um yeah, but it's those little things,
Yeah.
right?
And those things that transform the relationship from a transactional relationship to a deeper, actual collaborative,
Mhm.
strategic, partnership based kind of
Yeah,
relationship.
yeah. And then he texted me the other day because he had a question about his own second in command, and we had a phone call. And like I
Yeah.
don't think there's been any revenue referred to each other, but we have a great relationship, and at some point, I'm sure that will happen. But
Mm-hmm.
um, for me, lead generation is about relationships,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Marketing in general, right?
Yeah.
If you look at really the root definition of marketing, which a lot of people in the digital age have forgotten in the first place, but marketing is building trusting relationships,
Mm-hmm.
period. That's
Mm-hmm.
what marketing is. And
Mm-hmm.
so you've got it spot on right there, Clayton.
Yeah, there's some elements of what I do that are to create awareness, right? So that people maybe for the first time discover who I am, right? But then there's other elements that are more intentional to nurture that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
from awareness to relationship and adding value. Like a lot of what I do is adding value. How do you add value as much as humanly possible in every interaction that you have with
Yep.
people,
Yep.
regardless of whether they're a potential client or not, right?
Absolutely.
How do we
Or if
just,
they're already a client, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of your, say, like your project managers and account managers and the implementers, that's a lot of what they can also be doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you might have people on your team that are more forward facing, industry facing. They build themselves up as thought leaders in the industry. You still
Mm-hmm.
have your implementation team that's providing the deliverables, managing the client interactions from start to finish there. And they have the opportunity, and you have the opportunity to lead them in this of defining what is going to add value at every single stage of this interaction. And how do we make it consistent? How do we make them feel special? How do we make them feel seen as a human being and not just a
Mm-hmm.
project or a transaction? And so they have that opportunity, and you have the opportunity to guide them through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And those little things like a microphone or a coffee cup, right? Or, those are huge, right? That I guess differentiate yourself as well. And I've never done anything like that before, but I've been thinking about, geez, I should start doing something like that. And
What's
um,
stopping you?
I don't know, probably just time, but I should delegate it.
Sonia,
Right.
I've got more for you.
I've got another idea, Sonia, and I'm an integrator, but with with her, I'm very much a visionary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I did a good job setting her up, but now I'm a little more all over the place, and she has to deal with that.
Part of it. That's just part of it.
Yeah, yeah, but she's great. She's and when you get the right people doing this stuff, it's gold, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
she I'll give her something to do and she does it way better than I would, right?
Yep.
Or what I asked her to do. She goes the extra mile because she cares about me and my business and my family, and she knows us, right? So again, we're back to relationships,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, that's another topic for a different conversation, but it's if you're caring for your people and you have deep relationships with them, then they're going to give their best to you, right? For
Absolutely.
business.
Absolutely.
So, awesome. So what other tips do you have for us today?
I guess I would pivot into maybe like a common challenge maybe that
Yeah,
we can talk
please.
through for a little while.
Yeah.
So common challenge with implementing lead generation as a team sport, revenue generation through your entire team is bandwidth and things falling through the cracks. And um, whenever people get busy with client work, the agency comes last. That's just how things go, at least historically in most agencies. And something I like to bring to the surface with clients is the reality that they should be their number one client and treat it as if they were their number one client. Because if that number one client themselves does not succeed, everyone loses their job, right? In agencies, sometimes you have situations where if a client leaves, a couple people are going to lose their jobs. But if the agency is not a priority in marketing, everyone's losing their jobs because there's no
Mm-hmm.
cash flow to pay anyone. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have to come to terms with that reality and reprioritize your agency and make
Mm-hmm.
sure that things are happening. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a common way to do this that I advise on. Every team's different. There's not a one size fits all, but something that you can consider trying with your team is weekly stand-up meetings that are about 10 minutes long, maybe more, maybe less, depending on the size of your team. And having a visualized board. If you're all in the office, great. It could be physically in the space. If you were a digital team, you could do like a scrum board in a digital tool and have everyone's cards of what they're working on in there and move them along. Have everyone report out on what they're working on. Not only does it help people feel seen of the extra contributions that they're making, it helps people know if they're stuck. It helps give people space to collaborate and add value to what other people are working on as well. And it
Mm-hmm.
makes sure that you, the leader, have visibility on everything that's going on, even though you're not the one directly doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a common challenge. There's a possible solution to consider. There's other ways to go about it too, but I wanted to toss that into the
Yeah,
conversation as well.
that's good. That's good. And similarly for Sonia, and I'll have to get Sonia to watch this one because she's talked a lot in this one, talked about a lot in this one. Uh, Scorecard, right? Like
Yep.
I have a very simple scorecard. How many emails did you send? How many meetings did you book? I think not only does that help me know what's going on, but it also helps her feel good because she's doing what was asked of her, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was one thing that I really appreciated it, like when I go back, to when I was an employee, uh, before being, in the integrator role. I loved having a role where I was told exactly what to do, not necessarily how to do it, but what to do and how it would be measured.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of my favorite roles, which was because of this, was a long time ago. When I was in university, I worked at a beer warehouse, which was like, so what I did was I was just picking orders, right? But
Okay.
I had a quota, and I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
what the quota was, but it was X amount of cases per per hour, and I always exceeded that, and I always went home feeling good because I hit or exceeded my goal every shift, right? And I think um, that's key, right?
Mm-hmm.
For people to, for many reasons, right? For people to feel
Yes.
good about their role, but also for the company to hit its goals,
Right.
right? So I like your idea of a huddle and kind of some of that tied in
Well,
there.
and the scorecard approach too, I like using the 40X framework where you have your
Mhm.
WIG, your lags, and your
Yeah,
leads.
yeah,
By
yep,
defining clearly what those leads are, what the lagging results will be that will ultimately drive your wildly important goal, you
yeah.
are aligning everyone around this concept that yes, maybe a certain percentage of revenue growth is our wildly important goal, but what I'm actually shooting for is delivering on these three key activities that are going to get this intermediary goal of maybe improving client retention by 10% over the next 2 quarters.
Mm-hmm,
And that's really what I'm looking at because in the way you're breaking things out with your team for this lead generation as a team sport approach,
mm-hmm,
someone might not feel like they're actually going to be directly contributing to that revenue number. And so they
mm-hmm.
need a mile marker to look
Right.
at to
Yeah.
gauge their performance because no one likes to feel like they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Because oftentimes, as humans, you start to develop a sense of guilt if you feel
Mm-hmm,
like you're not actually contributing like the rest of the team is. And
mm-hmm,
so as a leader, you want to make sure that you're mitigating that in the approach that you set out with your team.
mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. And like what just came to mind is, like you said, the delivery people, the ops people that are actually delivering the service, yeah, they don't understand how they tie in to that. But you can do like customers and surveys, right? So that you can get like scores from that. Like I think about my current client. Recently, there was a local job here that came up, and it was a bidding job, and we are very unique in what we do. And 8 companies reached out to us to submit with them on their bid. Like that's, and I think there was like 10 companies submitting,
Okay.
right? So like everybody did. So why is that?
Yeah.
Is that because of marketing and sales? Yeah, maybe it's part of that, but it's because we are good at what we do. We are good at
Mm-hmm.
delivering what we promise, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we got that, but I'd say we have pretty good odds.
Right.
right? Because we're in on everything. So it's,
Mhm.
delivering and measuring delivery and customer satisfaction is also lead generation, because you're going to get referrals and repeat
Mhm.
business and so on, right? So
Mhm. Absolutely. Especially if you're working with enterprise level clients that have multiple departments and multiple people in similar job functions, but maybe you're only working with one or two of them,
mhm,
expanding that account out across their departments, being a really consultative, strategic advisor to them as an agency or as a
mhm,
professional services firm, that's golden. And a lot of that effort is going to happen through the interactions with your team,
mhm,
not uh, what is traditionally viewed as marketing activities, right?
right,
And so having that awareness that you start to seed into the minds of your operations and implementation teams is really important as well.
mhm. Yeah, that's really good. It's really good. Awesome. Anything else that you want to add? Any other challenges or tips?
There's
that
always
you-
going to be specific challenges to the business
Yeah,
because every business is unique,
yeah,
especially professional services firms, because the people make the place. You know this, Clayton. That's why you do what you do. But there are so many nuances and variables in how people interact and what they're doing and how to
mhm,
position them in the
yeah,
organization to yield the most success. And so be aware of that. Practice your observational skills,
yeah.
especially with this initiative as well, among all of your other initiatives.
Awesome. Great. Well, if someone wants to learn more about what you do and who you are, how should they get in touch?
Sure. So I am on LinkedIn. That's the only social media that I'm on, but you can also reach out to me. Danielle at gettingmomentum.com is my email address.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of our viewers, thank you for joining us today, Danielle. It was fun.
Okay. Thanks for
And
having me, Clayton.
yeah, thanks for sharing your passion on this topic. If today's interview added value to you, please subscribe to this channel for future interviews with experts in the world of business.